He left me at the altar in front of 300 people, and 2 years later, he showed up at my bakery crying, asking if love could survive what he did to me. Hello, my beautiful family. Welcome back. If this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share it with a friend. Now, let's go back to where it started, before everything changed. The white roses were wilting. I noticed that first, before the whispers, before my mother's hand gripping mine, so tight her nails left crescents in my palm, before the pastor's eyes dropped to the marble floor like he couldn't bear to look at me anymore. The roses were wilting, and Javon still wasn't here. Nia, baby. Mama's voice cracked, and I knew. God, I knew. He's coming. I whispered, my breath fogging the tulle of my veil. He's just traffic. You know, Atlanta traffic on a Saturday. Nia. My best friend Simone appeared at my side. Her bridesmaid dress the color of champagne, her face the color of ash. She held up her phone. He's not coming, sis. He sent a text. 300 people. My grandmother flew in from Jamaica. My cousin's gospel choir had practiced for 2 months. The reception hall was decorated with $10,000 worth of peonies and fairy lights. Javon's groomsmen stood at that altar like statues, their faces frozen between pity and rage. And he sent a text. Read it, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded like glass breaking in slow motion. Simone's hands shook. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Nia. You deserve better than me. I'm not ready. I thought I was, but I'm not. Please forgive me. The sanctuary, because of course we got married at Ebenezer Baptist, where my grandparents got married, where my mother was baptized, went so quiet you could hear the candles flickering. 300 people holding their breath, waiting to see if the bride would shatter or explode. I did neither. I turned to my mother, handed her my bouquet of white calla lilies, and said, tell them the reception is still happening. We paid for it. They should eat. Baby, tell them. My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before a hurricane. And tell them Nia Laurent does not fall apart for any man, not even the one she loved more than breathing. I walked down that aisle alone, not running, not crying, walking like a queen being coronated in a kingdom of whispers. Every step felt like walking through fire, but I kept my chin up, my shoulders back, my spine made of something stronger than bone. Outside, the September sun was setting, painting the Atlanta sky in shades of peach and gold, the same colors as my wedding theme. Romantic, elegant, wasted. Simone caught up to me on the church steps, kicked off her heels, and wrapped her arm around my waist. Where are we going? Away from here, I said, away from everyone looking at me, like I'm something broken. You're not broken, Nia. I stopped walking, turned to her, and for the first time since I put on that dress, I let myself feel it. The humiliation, the betrayal, the shattering, nauseating realization that the man I'd spent 3 years loving, planning with, dreaming beside, didn't want me enough to show up. Then why do I feel like I am? I whispered. Simone pulled me into her arms right there on the sidewalk, my $8,000 dress dragging on the concrete. And I finally cried. Not pretty tears. Ugly, gulping sobs that tasted like salt and mascara, and the death of every promise I believed in. Behind us, I could hear the murmur of guests leaving the church. I could hear my Uncle Jerome shouting, "Where that boy at? I'll kill him myself." I could hear my mother crying, the soft, helpless kind of crying that mothers do when they can't fix their daughter's pain. But I couldn't move. I stood there in my wedding dress, holding on to my best friend, and let myself break. Because tomorrow I'd have to start putting the pieces back together. Tomorrow I'd have to face the pitying looks, the gossip, the questions. Tomorrow I'd have to return gifts and cancel the honeymoon to Turks and Caicos and explain to my boss why I needed more than 3 days off for a wedding that never happened. But tonight, I let Javon King take everything from me. I just didn't know yet that 2 years later, he'd try to give it all back. 2 years later, and I still couldn't look at white roses. Nia, the Johnson wedding order is ready for pickup. My assistant manager, Kendra, called from the front of Sweet Mercy Bakery, her voice cutting through the hum of mixers and the scent of brown butter. I wiped flour from my hands and checked the 3-tier cake one last time. Champagne-colored buttercream, sugar peonies cascading down the sides, delicate gold leaf accents. Perfect. Everything I made was perfect now. It had to be. Beautiful work, boss, Kendra said, appearing in the doorway of the kitchen. She was 23, fresh out of culinary school, and looked at me like I'd hung the moon. You ever get tired of making wedding cakes? I smiled, the practiced one I'd perfected over 2 years. Why would I? Love is beautiful. Even after, she stopped herself, her dark skin flushing darker. Sorry, that was out of line. It's fine. I turned back to the marble countertop, started measuring ingredients for tomorrow's batch of honey cornbread muffins. That was a long time ago. It wasn't. 2 years felt like yesterday, and a lifetime ago all at once, after that day. And I never called it my wedding day. Just that day, I'd spent 3 months in my apartment, rotating between my bed and my couch, living on seamless and my mother's pity casseroles. Simone had moved in temporarily, monitoring me like I might dissolve into thin air. You need to do something, Nia, she'd said one night, finding me on the kitchen floor at 2 a.m., eating cake batter straight from the bowl. This isn't living. This is haunting your own life. I don't know how to do anything else, I'd whispered. I built everything around him. The apartment we picked together. The Pinterest boards. The baby names. How do I just start over? Simone had sat down beside me, stolen the bowl, taken a spoonful of batter. You do what you've always done when life got hard. You bake. So I did. I baked like my life depended on it, because it did. I baked my grandmother's hummingbird cake recipe, my mother's sweet potato pie, the red velvet cupcakes Javon used to beg me to make every Sunday. I baked until my tiny apartment kitchen couldn't hold anymore, until I was giving away desserts to neighbors, to the homeless shelter down the street, to the church ladies who whispered about me every Sunday. And then Mrs. Patterson from my building said, "Baby, you're too talented to be giving this away. You should sell it." 6 months later, I had a business plan. 9 months later, I had investors. A year after that day, I opened Sweet Mercy Bakery in the old 4th Ward, a cozy spot with exposed brick vintage chandeliers, and a menu that mixed Southern classics with French technique. The name came from my grandmother. Mercy ain't just forgiveness. Baby, she told me when I was young. It's the sweetness you give yourself when life turns bitter. I'd needed a lot of mercy. Now, Sweet Mercy was the most popular bakery in Atlanta. We'd been featured in Atlanta Magazine, had a 6-week wait list for wedding cakes, and I'd just been invited to compete on a Netflix baking show. I'd bought a loft in Ponce City Market, drove a Mercedes, and had a waiting list of men who wanted to take me to dinner. I didn't date any of them. Nia, Kendra's voice pulled me back. You good? You've been measuring that same cup of flour for like 2 minutes. I blinked, realized she was right. Yeah. Sorry. Just thinking. About. Nothing important. I poured the flour into the mixer, hit the switch. The whir filled the silence between us. The truth was, I thought about Javon every single day. I thought about him when couples came in holding hands, debating between lemon and almond cake. I thought about him when I saw men in navy suits, his favorite color. I thought about him every time someone asked, So why isn't someone like you married? Like my value decreased with every year I stayed single. I blocked his number the night of the wedding, blocked him on Instagram, Facebook, everything. Simone told me he tried to reach out a few times in those first months, messages she deleted before I could see them, phone calls she never mentioned. He doesn't deserve your energy, she'd said. He made his choice. And I'd made mine. I chose me. I chose this life I'd built from the ashes of the one he'd burned down. So why, 2 years later, did I still feel like I was waiting for something? Nia. Kendra's voice went high, excited. Girl, there's someone here to see you. And he is fine. My stomach dropped. No, it couldn't be. Did he give a name? He said to tell you it's Javon. Says it's important. She lowered her voice, leaned in close. Wait, is this the guy? The one who? Tell him I'm busy. My hands were shaking. After 2 years of silence, he shows up at my business? Tell him I have nothing to say to him. Kendra looked between me and the front of the shop, conflicted. Nia, he looks really upset. Like crying in public upset. And here's the question I'd been avoiding for 2 years. What would you do if the person who destroyed you showed up begging for a chance to explain? Would you listen, or would you protect the peace you fought to build? I didn't want to care that Javon was crying. I didn't want to care at all. But my hands were still shaking when I said, give me 5 minutes, then send him back. Kendra nodded, disappeared through the doorway. I gripped the edge of the counter, closed my eyes, and tried to remember how to breathe, because in 5 minutes, I'd have to look into the eyes of the man who taught me what love felt like, and what it felt like when love walked away. And I had no idea if I was strong enough to survive him twice. He looked different. That was the first thing I noticed when Javon walked into my kitchen, the private space where I created, where I healed, where I built a new version of myself. He looked thinner, older, like the last 2 years had aged him a decade. His locks were longer, pulled back in a ponytail. He wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans instead of the designer clothes he used to favor. And his eyes, those warm brown eyes that used to make me feel like the only woman in the world, were red-rimmed and desperate. Nia. My name came out like a prayer, like he'd been holding it in his mouth for 2 years, afraid to let it go. I crossed my arms, leaned against the counter, kept my voice flat. You have 5 minutes. I know I don't deserve even that. He took a step closer, then stopped when he saw me tense. I know I don't deserve to breathe the same air as you, but I had to. Spit it out, Javon. I have work to do. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Good. I wanted him to feel a fraction of what I'd felt. I was scared, he said finally. That day, I woke up and I looked at that tuxedo hanging on the door, and I panicked. I thought about my parents, how they got married at 23 and were divorced by 30, how my dad cheated, how my mom became this bitter, angry person, how marriage killed whatever love they had. So you decided to kill ours instead. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. I thought I was protecting you. His voice cracked. I thought if I left before we made it official, before we were legally bound, you could move on easier. Find someone better. Someone who wasn't broken like me. I laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. You thought humiliating me in front of 300 people was protecting me? You couldn't have had this crisis the night before? The week before? You had to wait until I was standing at the altar. I know. Tears streamed down his face now, and he didn't bother wiping them away. I know it was the worst thing I could have done. I've replayed that day 1,000 times, tried to rewrite it, tried to figure out what the hell was wrong with me. And the truth is, Nia, I was a coward. I was terrified of becoming my father. So I became worse than him. Silence stretched between us. filled only with the distant hum of the mixer in the front room, the muffled sounds of customers ordering coffee and croissants. Why now? I asked quietly. Why show up after 2 years? He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, turned it toward me. On the screen was a photo from Atlanta magazine. Me standing in front of Sweet Mercy, arms crossed, confident smile, the headline reading, "From Heartbreak to Sweet Success, How Nia Laurent Built Atlanta's Hottest Bakery." "I saw this 3 months ago," he said. "I read the whole article. You talked about that day, about how it broke you, about how you used baking to piece yourself back together." He lowered the phone, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "And I realized I'd spent 2 years running from my fear, and you'd spent 2 years running toward your power. You became everything I knew you could be. And I stayed the same scared boy who couldn't show up for the woman he loved. Loved." I stepped toward him, now, my anger rising like heat. "You don't leave someone you love at the altar, Javon. You don't send a coward's text message and disappear. You don't let them spend 2 years wondering what was so wrong with them that you couldn't even show up to say it to their face. There was nothing wrong with you." His voice rose, raw with emotion. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. You were perfect. You were perfect. Too perfect for me. Too good. Too strong. I didn't feel like I deserved you, Nia. And instead of being honest about that, instead of telling you I was drowning in my own insecurity, I ran. And now you want what? Forgiveness? Closure? Another chance?" I shook my head, felt the familiar sting of tears. I'd sworn I wouldn't cry. "You can't just walk back into my life because you finally did some soul-searching. I'm not the same woman who waited for you at that altar. That woman died the day you didn't show up." "I know." He took another step closer, and this time I didn't move away. "I'm not asking for you back. I'm not asking for anything except let me say what I should have said 2 years ago. Let me apologize the way I should have apologized then." "Fine." I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, angry at myself for crying. "Apologize." Javon got down on his knees, right there in my kitchen, on the concrete floor dusted with flour and powdered sugar. The man who'd left me at the altar knelt before me. "I'm sorry, Nia Laurent," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry for being too weak to love you the way you deserved. I'm sorry for humiliating you. I'm sorry for taking what should have been the happiest day of your life and turning it into your worst nightmare. I'm sorry for every night you cried yourself to sleep, every morning you woke up and had to remember what I did to you. I'm sorry for making you question your worth when the truth is you were always too valuable for someone like me." My chest felt like it was caving in. Every word landed like a punch, like a bomb, like both at once. "I spent 2 years in therapy," he continued, "unpacking my father's abandonment, my fear of commitment, my self-sabotage. I'm not healed. I don't know if I'll ever be fully healed, but I'm better. I'm trying. And I needed you to know that what I did had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with my own brokenness." He stayed on his knees, waiting, not asking me to forgive him, not asking me to take him back, just waiting. And for the first time since he walked through my door, I let myself really look at him. Not the man who hurt me, but the man who was hurting. The man who'd been so terrified of repeating his father's mistakes that he'd made entirely new ones. "Get up," I said softly. He rose slowly, his eyes searching my face for something. Anger, forgiveness, hope. I didn't know what he found there. "You want to know the worst part?" I asked. "It's not that you left. It's that you made me believe I was hard to love, that I was too much, too independent, too successful. That's the real damage, Javon. You didn't just leave me at the altar. You left me doubting everything I knew about myself. And I will regret that for the rest of my life." He whispered. I looked at him for a long moment, then walked to the door, held it open. Your 5 minutes are up. Nia, leave Javon. I need to think. He nodded slowly, walked toward the door. But he stopped beside me, close enough that I could smell the cologne I used to love. I'm not asking for anything, but if you ever want to talk, if you ever want answers, if you ever want to just scream at me until you feel better, I'm here. I'll always be here now. Then he was gone, and I was alone in my kitchen, surrounded by the empire I'd built from my pain, wondering why closure felt less like peace and more like the start of something I wasn't ready for. I didn't tell anyone about Javon's visit. Not Simone, who would have immediately driven to my place with wine and a list of reasons why I should never speak to him again. Not my mother, who still crossed herself whenever his name came up. Not even Kendra, who kept giving me curious looks every time I got quiet. For 3 days, I pretended everything was normal. I baked. I smiled at customers. I approved invoices and taste-tested new recipes and interviewed a potential pastry chef. But at night, alone in my loft, I replayed every word Javon had said. You were always too valuable for someone like me. On the 4th day, Simone showed up at the bakery unannounced. Spill, she said, sliding into the booth across from me during my lunch break. She pushed a slice of my own sweet potato pie toward me. You've been weird since Tuesday. What happened? Nothing happened. Nia Laurent, I have known you since we were 6 years old. I know when you're lying, and you're lying. She narrowed her eyes. Is it a man? Please tell me you're finally dating again. Javon came by. The words fell between us like a bomb. Simone's face went through a series of emotions: shock, rage, protectiveness, before settling on barely controlled fury. I'm sorry, what? He came here? To your business? He wanted to apologize. Oh, he wanted to apologize. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 2 years later, he finally grew a conscience. What did you say? Please tell me you cursed him out. Please tell me you threw him out on his. I listened. Simone stared at me. You listened. He got on his knees. Simone. He apologized for everything. He told me he'd been in therapy, that he understood what he did to me, that he... Stop. Simone held up her hand. Just stop. Nia, do you hear yourself? He destroyed you. I watched you fall apart for months. I held you while you cried yourself sick. I deleted dozens of his pathetic messages because I knew they'd only hurt you more. And now he shows up with some therapy talk, and you're, what? Considering forgiving him. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I can see it on your face. She leaned forward, her voice softening. Babe, I love you. You're my sister, which is why I have to tell you this. That man doesn't deserve your forgiveness. He doesn't deserve 5 minutes of your time. He made his choice, and you built something beautiful from the wreckage. Don't let him back in to destroy it again. What if he's different? The question came out smaller than I intended. What if he's not? Simone countered. What if this is just guilt? What if he saw you succeeding, and his ego couldn't handle it? What if he comes back just long enough to make you believe in him again, and then he runs? I didn't have an answer for that. Simone reached across the table, took my hand. You deserve someone who shows up, Nia. Not someone who has to learn how to show up after breaking your heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my loft, looked out at the Atlanta skyline, tried to quiet the war happening in my chest. Part of me wanted to block Javon's number again, to pretend the last week never happened. But another part, the part one was afraid to examine too closely, wanted to understand. At 1 a.m., I did something I'd sworn I'd never do. I unblocked his number. At 1:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. Javon, I know it's late. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. I don't expect anything else. I hope you're well. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Me, why did you really come back? 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. Javon, because I've been half alive for 2 years, and seeing you thriving made me realize I needed to at least try to make it right. Even if right just means you knowing the truth. Me, what truth? Javon, that I never stopped loving you. I was just too broken to know what to do with that love. I stared at those words until they blurred. Me, love isn't supposed to hurt like that. Javon, I know. And I'm sorry I taught you that it could. Me, I don't know if I can forgive you. Javon, I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know that you weren't the problem. You were never the problem. I was. I set the phone down, pressed my palms against my eyes. The truth was, part of me had always blamed myself. Wondered if I'd been too focused on work, too independent, too intimidating. Wondered if I'd somehow pushed him away without realizing it. And now he was telling me I hadn't. Now he was telling me the thing I'd needed to hear 2 years ago. Me, I need time to think. Javon, take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. The next morning, my mother showed up at the bakery. That's how I knew Simone had called her. Baby, we need to talk, Mama said, her voice gentle but firm. She wore her church clothes, a lavender suit, pearls, hair perfect. She'd come straight from Bible study to stage this intervention. We sat in my office, the small back room where I did paperwork and occasionally hid from the world. Simone told me Javon came by. She started. Of course she did. Don't be mad at her. She's worried. I'm worried. Mama reached for my hand. That boy put you through hell, Nia. I watched my baby girl go from this bright, happy woman to someone I barely recognized. And now he shows up and suddenly you're, what? Reconsidering? I'm not reconsidering anything. I'm just trying to understand. Understand what? Why he broke your heart. Why he humiliated our family. Her voice rose slightly, the Caribbean lilt becoming more pronounced like it always did when she was emotional. Some things don't need understanding. Baby, some things just need to be left in the past. But what if he really has changed? I pulled my hand back, frustrated. What if he really did work on himself? What if he hasn't? Mama interrupted. What if this is just him being selfish again? Coming back because he needs closure, he needs forgiveness, he needs to feel better about what he did. I fell silent. Let me tell you something. Mama continued, her voice softening. Your father left when you were 7, walked out that door, and didn't look back. And for years, I waited for him to come back, to apologize, to explain. You know what I learned? That sometimes people leave because of their own brokenness, and sometimes they come back for the same reason. It's still about them, not you. So you're saying I shouldn't forgive him? I'm saying forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. You can forgive him and still walk away. You can understand he was broken and still protect yourself from being broken again. She cupped my face in her hands. You built something beautiful from that pain, baby. Don't let him tear it down. And that was the question haunting me. Could you forgive someone who shattered you, even if they've changed? Or is protecting your peace more important than giving second chances? After Mama left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at my phone. Finally, I typed a message. We need to talk, but not here. Meet me at Piedmont Park tomorrow at 2 p.m. Javon, I'll be there. I didn't know what I was going to say to him. I didn't know if I was opening the door to healing or to more heartbreak, but I knew I couldn't move forward until I understood what happened, until I looked into his eyes and decided for myself whether the man who destroyed me had truly become someone different, or whether he was still the same man who couldn't show up when it mattered most. The next afternoon, I stood under the oak tree, where Javon and I had our first date 5 years ago. And I waited to see if this time he would show up. He was already there when I arrived. That caught me off guard. Javon stood under the same oak tree where he'd kissed me for the first time 5 years ago, hands in his pockets, staring at the Atlanta skyline like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. He turned when he heard my footsteps on the grass, and the look on his face, vulnerable, terrified, hopeful, made my chest tighten. "You came," he said softly. I said I would. I stopped a few feet away, maintained the distance. "I show up, Javon. That's what I do." He flinched but nodded. "You always have." We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, the park alive around us, joggers on the path, families picnicking on blankets, a street musician playing saxophone in the distance. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that my entire world was balancing on whatever happened in the next hour. "Walk with me?" he asked. I nodded. We fell into step beside each other, not touching, the space between us feeling both too wide and not wide enough. "I need you to tell me everything," I said, finally. Not the sanitized version, not the therapy speak. "I need the truth, Javon. What happened that morning? What was going through your head?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe he'd refuse. But then he started talking. "I woke up at 5 a.m. He began, his voice low. "Couldn't sleep. I kept having this dream, this nightmare, really, where we were at our wedding, and suddenly I turned into my father, like literally morphed into him, and you were standing there, and I could see the moment you realized you'd married the wrong person, the moment the love died in your eyes. That's not. Let me finish, please." He took a shaky breath. "I went to my parents' house the night before the wedding. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for, I don't know, reassurance? My dad was drunk on the couch. My mom was in her bedroom, hadn't even come out to say hello. And I just sat there in their house, this house that used to be full of love and laughter when I was a kid, and all I could see was the graveyard of what marriage had done to them." We reached the lake, stood watching the ducks glide across the water. My dad looked at me with these empty eyes. Javon continued, and he said, "You really gonna do it, son? Lock yourself down at 29? Make yourself miserable for the rest of your life?" And I said, "Nia's not like that. We're not like you and Mom." And you know what he said? I shook my head, afraid to speak. He said, "That's what I thought too. But marriage changes people. It turns love into obligation, turns passion into routine. One day you'll wake up and realize you've been playing house with a stranger, and by then it'll be too late. You'll have kids, a mortgage, and no way out except to become the villain. So you became the villain anyway," I said quietly. "Yeah." He laughed bitterly. "I became the villain anyway, because when I woke up that morning, all I could think about was that nightmare, about turning into him, about hurting you slowly over years instead of all at once. And in my twisted, panicked logic, I thought, if I left before the marriage, you could heal faster. You could hate me and move on. You wouldn't be legally tied to me. You wouldn't waste decades with someone who was broken. But you didn't just leave, Javon. You waited until I was at the altar, until everyone we knew was watching. You could have told me any time before that." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, and that's what I can't forgive myself for. The truth is, I was trying to go through with it. I got dressed. I drove toward the church. But then I started having a panic attack in the car, like couldn't breathe, thought I was dying. I pulled over on the side of the road and just broke, completely broke. And all I could think was, I can't do this. I can't walk in there and pretend I'm not terrified. I can't stand at that altar and make promises I don't trust myself to keep. So you sent a text. My voice was flat. So I sent a text. He echoed, shame-coding every word. Because I was a coward. Because I couldn't face you. Because I knew if I saw you in that dress, if I looked into your eyes, I'd go through with it anyway. And then we'd both be trapped. I stopped walking, turned to face him fully. You don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to decide that I'm better off without you, without even asking me. That's not protection, Javon. That's control disguised as care. You're right. Tears streamed down his face now. You're absolutely right. And that's what therapy helped me see. That I was so busy trying not to be my father that I repeated the exact same pattern, making unilateral decisions, running away instead of communicating, putting my fear above your agency. So what changed? I asked. What made you finally show up now? He reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn piece of paper, the Atlanta magazine article about me, and sweet mercy. It was creased and faded, like he'd read it 1,000 times. This, he said, this changed everything. I read this interview where you talked about that day, about how you felt standing at that altar, waiting, about how you went home and didn't leave your apartment for months, about how you used baking to survive, to rebuild, to become who you are now. And there was this one line that destroyed me. He unfolded the paper with shaking hands, found the passage, read it aloud. The worst part wasn't that he left. It was realizing that the person I loved never actually existed. I built a future with a ghost. His voice broke on the last word. That's when I understood. He continued. I'd been so focused on my own pain, my own fear, that I'd never actually confronted what I did to you. I'd convinced myself that disappearing was merciful, that you'd get over it, that you'd be fine. But you weren't fine. You were devastated. And I wasn't there to even witness the damage I'd caused. I wiped my eyes, angry at the tears. So what do you want, Javon? You want me to tell you it's okay? That I understand? That your trauma excuses what you did to me? No. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. I want you to know that I see you now. I see the woman you became despite what I did. I see your strength, your resilience, your incredible heart, and I want you to know that every day for 2 years, I've thought about you, wondered if you were okay, wished I could take it back, wished I could be the man you deserved. Are you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Are you that man now? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know. I'm better than I was. I've done the work. I understand my patterns, but I can't promise I'm healed, Nia. I can only promise that if you gave me a chance, and I'm not asking for one, I'm just saying if I would show up every single day. I would communicate. I would choose you even when I'm scared. I would be the man I should have been that day. And what if you get scared again? I challenged. What if we try this, and you panic and run? What if I open my heart and you break it again? Then you'd have every right to never forgive me. His voice was steady now, certain, but I don't think I would run. Because the last 2 years taught me something. Running doesn't make the fear go away. It just makes you a coward and afraid. At least if I stay and face it, I'm only afraid. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd broken me, who'd grown, who'd come back, at the vulnerability in his eyes, the sincerity in his voice, the way his hands trembled slightly like he was terrified I'd walk away. And I realized something that made my chest ache. I still loved him. Not the way I had 2 years ago. That love was naive, untested, full of fantasies about perfect futures. This love was different, harder, born from understanding that people are messy and broken and capable of terrible things, and sometimes they grow from those terrible things. But love alone wasn't enough. It never had been. I need time, I said finally. I need time to figure out if I can trust you again, if I even want to trust you again. Because I built a whole life without you, Javon. A good life. And I don't know if I'm willing to risk that for what? The possibility of us. I understand. He nodded, stepped back. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. You said that before. I reminded him gently. I know. And I meant it then, too. I just didn't know how to fight my own fear. He smiled sadly. But I'm learning. Slowly. And if you decide you can't do this, if you decide I had my chance and I blew it, I'll respect that. I'll walk away and I'll never bother you again. But I hope, God, I hope that you'll give me a chance to prove I can be different. I turned away, looked out at the lake, at the sun setting over Atlanta, painting everything gold. There's something I need you to understand. I said, my voice stronger now. If we do this, and I'm not saying we will, it's not about going back to who we were. That couple doesn't exist anymore. I'm not the woman who waited at that altar, and you're not the man who left her there. If we try this, we'd be starting completely new. No picking up where we left off. No pretending the last 2 years didn't happen. I wouldn't want that anyway. Javon said, the woman you are now, she's incredible, stronger, fiercer, more sure of herself. I don't want the old us back. I want to know the woman you've become. I faced him again. Then prove it. Don't text me. Don't call me. Don't show up at my bakery. Court me, Javon. Show me who you are now. Show me that you can be consistent, that you can show up, that you can handle the boring, everyday work of rebuilding trust. If you can do that, if you can prove over time that you're serious, then maybe we can talk about trying again. Hope bloomed across his face. How long? As long as it takes for me to feel safe with you again. I held his gaze. And if that's too hard, if that's too much work, then walk away now. Because I won't survive you leaving me twice. I can do that, he said quickly. I can do whatever you need. Then start by going home, I said softly. And tomorrow, show me you mean it. He nodded, and I saw the determination settle into his features. The same determination I'd seen 5 years ago when he pursued me the first time. Except now it was tempered with humility, with awareness, with the knowledge of what he'd lost. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for even considering this. Don't thank me yet, I said. Thank me when you've proven you can stay. I walked away first this time, and as I headed back to my car, I realized I wasn't sure if I just opened the door to healing or to heartbreak. But for the first time in 2 years, I was willing to find out. The flowers started arriving the next day. Not roses. Javon remembered I couldn't stand white roses anymore. Instead, he sent sunflowers with a simple card. Day 1. I'm showing up. Day 2. A potted orchid delivered to Sweet Mercy with a note. These bloom for months if you care for them consistently. I'm learning to be consistent. Day 3. Nothing. I spent the whole day anxious, waiting, wondering if he'd already given up. Then at 8 p.m., as I was locking up the bakery, my phone buzzed. Javon, no flowers today. Because grand gestures are easy. I want to prove I can show up even when it's quiet, even when there's nothing spectacular to say. So here it is. I'm thinking about you. I hope you had a good day. That's all. I stared at that message for 10 minutes. He was learning. Over the next 3 weeks, Javon showed up in small, steady ways. He didn't ask to see me, didn't pressure me for updates. He just existed in my orbit, proving his presence. Week 1, he sent articles about businesses he thought I'd find interesting, donated to a culinary scholarship program in my name, left my favorite coffee order at the bakery with Kendra every Monday morning, oat milk latte, extra shot vanilla. Week 2, he started volunteering at the same homeless shelter where I donated leftover pastries every week. I found out from Mrs. Patterson, who volunteered there too. That young man been showing up every Tuesday and Thursday. She told me, says he's trying to be of service, trying to be better. Week 3, he sent me a letter. An actual, handwritten letter. Dear Nia, I know you said not to call or text too much, so I'm writing this the old-fashioned way. My therapist suggested it, said sometimes putting pen to paper forces you to be more honest. I want you to know what I've been working on. Not to impress you, but because you deserve to know who I'm becoming. I'm in therapy twice a week now. We're unpacking my abandonment issues, my fear of commitment, my pattern of running when things get real. It's hard. Some days I leave those sessions feeling like I've been turned inside out. But I'm staying with it. I reconnected with my mom. Really talked to her for the first time in years. Turns out she's been in therapy too, working through her own pain from my dad. We're both learning that we don't have to repeat their story. I'm reading books about healthy relationships, about communication, about showing up even when you're scared. Some of it sounds like common sense, but apparently I needed someone to spell it out for me. And every day I think about you, not in the obsessive way I used to, where I couldn't function without you, but in a way that makes me want to be better. You're thriving, and that motivates me to thrive too. I don't know if you'll ever give me another chance, but even if you don't, I want to thank you. Losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and the thing that finally forced me to face myself. Respectfully yours, Javon. I read that letter 3 times, then tucked it into my nightstand drawer. At week 4, Simone confronted me again. Okay, what's happening? She asked, cornering me in my office. You've been different lately. Lighter. Are you talking to him? Not directly, I admitted, but he's been present, showing up in small ways. Nia, I know what you're going to say, I interrupted. But Simone, he's different. He's not the same man who left me. He's doing the work. He's being consistent. He's not asking for anything except the chance to prove himself. Simone sat down heavily, and you're falling for it. Maybe, I said quietly, or maybe I'm falling for who he's becoming. There's a difference. Is there? She looked at me with worried eyes. Babe, I just don't want you to get hurt again. That man almost destroyed you. And I built myself back up. I reminded her, I'm not that broken woman anymore. I'm stronger now. Strong enough to walk away if he messes up, but also strong enough to stay if he doesn't. Simone was quiet for a long moment. Then, if you do this, if you really give him another chance, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll protect yourself, that you won't lose yourself in him again, that if he even thinks about running, you'll cut him off without looking back. I promise, I said, and I meant it. Week 6, I finally agreed to see him. We met at a small Ethiopian restaurant in East Atlanta, neutral territory, public, safe. Javon arrived early again, waited outside, so I wouldn't have to walk in looking for him. Hi, he said when I approached. His smile was nervous, genuine. Hi. Inside, we sat across from each other, and for the first time in 2 years, it didn't feel like sitting across from a stranger or an enemy. It felt like sitting across from someone I was getting to know. Tell me about your week, he said after we ordered. Not tell me you've decided to give me another chance. Not I've missed you so much. Just tell me about your week. So I did. I told him about the wedding cake that almost fell over during delivery, about hiring 2 new employees, about the Netflix baking show, wanting to film at Sweet Mercy, about the small, ordinary moments that made up my life now. And he listened, really listened, asked questions, laughed at the funny parts, didn't try to insert himself into my stories or make it about us. Your turn, I said. Tell me about your week. He told me about his therapy breakthrough, how he'd finally confronted his father about the things he'd said before the wedding, how his dad had apologized, admitted he'd projected his own failures onto Javon, how They were slowly trying to rebuild their relationship. He told me about starting a new job as a youth mentor at a community center, working with teenage boys who grew up without fathers. How scared he was of messing it up, but how showing up for them was teaching him how to show up for himself. He told me about the small apartment he'd moved into, how he was learning to be comfortable being alone, how he'd stopped equating being single with being lonely. I used to think I needed someone else to complete me, he said softly. That's why I panicked before the wedding. I thought marriage meant losing myself. But now I'm learning that you can't truly love someone else until you're whole on your own. And are you? I asked. Whole on your own? He considered the question carefully. I'm getting there. I'm not perfect. I still have bad days. But I'm learning to sit with my fear instead of running from it. And that's something. We talked for 3 hours. When the restaurant started closing, we walked to Piedmont Park, back to the same oak tree where this all began again. Can I ask you something? Javon said as we stood under the branches. Yeah. Do you think you could ever trust me again? Be honest. I looked up at the leaves, at the way the streetlights filtered through them, creating patterns of light and shadow. I think trust isn't something you give once and keep forever. I said slowly. I think it's something you build over time, with consistency, with showing up, with proving through actions that your words mean something. I turned to face him, and I think you've been building it. Slowly, but you have been. Hope flickered across his face. So what does that mean? It means I'm willing to try, I said. Not a relationship. Not yet. But dating. Getting to know who you are now. Seeing if the man you've become and the woman I've become can build something new together. You mean it? His voice was barely a whisper. I mean it. But Javon, I need you to understand something. I stepped closer, looked directly into his eyes. If you run again, if you get scared and disappear, if you break my heart twice, there won't be a third chance. I will walk away, and I will never look back. Can you handle that? Yes. No hesitation. I can handle that. Because I'm not going to run. I've spent 2 years learning how to stay, and I'm ready to prove it. And that's what I needed to believe. Not that people can't change, but that some people, when they lose everything, finally learn how to hold on. Do you believe love deserves a second chance when someone has truly changed? Or are some betrayals too deep to heal? Okay, I said softly. Then let's try. He smiled, the real smile I remembered from 5 years ago, before fear took over. Can I hug you? I nodded. He pulled me into his arms carefully, like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking. And for the first time since that day at the altar, I let myself lean into him. Let myself feel the warmth of being held by someone who knew the worst parts of me and was still trying to earn his way back. Thank you, he whispered into my hair. Thank you for being brave enough to try again. Don't thank me yet, I said, pulling back to look at him. Thank me when we make it work. I will, he promised. Every single day, I will. Sweet Mercy Bakery was featured on the Netflix show. We won. The exposure tripled our business. Javon showed up to every taping, sat in the audience, cheered louder than anyone else. He never made it about him, never tried to take credit for my success, just supported me from the sidelines, the way a partner should. We took it slow, painfully slow. Coffee dates, walks in the park, long conversations about our fears, our dreams, our boundaries, therapy sessions together, learning how to communicate without running or shutting down. There were hard days, days when I remembered standing at that altar, when the old wound reopened, and I questioned everything. Days when Javon got scared, and I could see him wanting to retreat, wanting to protect himself by leaving first. But he didn't run, and I didn't give up. We learned each other's triggers, learned how to fight without destroying each other. Learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other even when it's hard. On a warm April evening, 6 months after our first date after the betrayal, Javon showed up at Sweet Mercy just as I was closing. "Walk with me?" he asked. We walked to Piedmont Park, to the oak tree, to the place where endings and beginnings seemed to overlap. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. My heart stopped. "Please don't be a ring." "We're not ready." "I'm not ready." But it wasn't a ring. It was a key. "It's to my apartment," he said quickly, seeing my panic. "I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm giving you access to my space, to my life, to all of me. So you know that I'm not hiding anything anymore, that you can show up anytime, see who I am when you're not around, and know that I'm still the same person." I took the key, felt the weight of it in my palm. This is a big step. I know. And if it's too much, if you're not ready, I understand. But Nia, I want you to know that I'm all in. I'm not half loving you. I'm not keeping one foot out the door. I'm here, fully present, ready to build whatever future you're willing to build with me. I looked at him, this man who'd broken me, who'd grown, who showed up every single day for 6 months without fail. This man who'd learned that love wasn't about grand gestures, but about consistent, quiet devotion. "I'm not ready to move in," I said honestly, "but I'll take the key, because I'm all in too." His smile could have lit up the Atlanta skyline. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. We'd been taking physical intimacy, slowly too, rebuilding that trust. "Yeah," I whispered. "You can kiss me." He cupped my face in his hands, and when his lips met mine, it felt like coming home. Not to the home we'd lost, but to a new one we were building together, stronger, wiser, more honest. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped, but I love you differently now. Better. I love you too," I admitted, "and I'm terrified, but I'm choosing you anyway." "That's all I need," he said. "You choosing me every day, and I'll choose you right back." We didn't get married right away. We waited, built our foundation stronger, went to couples therapy, learned each other completely. Sweet Mercy expanded to 3 locations. Javon's youth mentorship program grew, helped dozens of boys find positive male role models. We built separate lives that complemented each other instead of consuming each other. And on a Saturday afternoon in September, exactly 3 years after the day he left me at the altar, Javon asked me to marry him. This time, I said yes with my whole heart. This time, I knew he would show up. And on our wedding day, as I walked down the aisle of a small chapel filled with only our closest family and friends, I saw him standing there, crying, smiling, present. When I reached him, he took my hands and whispered, "I'm here. I'm always going to be here." "I know," I whispered back. "And so am I." The pastor smiled, "Dearly beloved." And as we stood there, making promises we'd learned how to keep, I realized something. Some love stories don't get happily ever after the first time. Some love stories have to break completely before they can be rebuilt into something unbreakable. This was ours, and it was worth the wait. I found out I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning. I stared at the test in the bathroom of our home. The loft we'd moved into together after the wedding, my hands shaking. Javon knocked softly. "Babe, you okay in there?" I opened the door, held up the test. His eyes went wide, then filled with tears. Then he was laughing and crying and picking me up and spinning me around. "We're having a baby," he said, setting me down gently like I might break. "We're really having a baby." "Are you scared?" I asked, searching his face. He considered the question, then shook his head. "No, I'm not scared, because I know now that fear doesn't mean you run. It means you hold on tighter. He placed his hand on my still flat stomach, looked into my eyes. I'm going to show up for you, he said, for our baby, every single day. Through the hard parts, the scary parts, all of it, I'm going to be the father I needed, the husband you deserve. I know you will, I said, and I meant it, because over the last year and a half, Javon had proven something I once thought impossible. People can change. Not everyone. Not always. But some people, when they lose everything, finally learn what it means to fight for what matters. He'd fought for me, for us, for the chance to be better. And together, we'd built something neither of us could have built alone. A love story that survived the worst and became something beautiful,